Welcome to the Daily Devo. My name is Diana. Today we are going to talk about remembering communion. Hey, what are some of the things that remind you of people? What are those sights, those smells, the location that bring you back to a good memory of somebody? I had a woman share with me how she walked into an antique store and she saw these old china patterns, and they took her back to memories of her grandparents and eating cookies together at their kitchen table. What does that for you? Is it seeing a certain model and brand of a car? Is it catching a specific smell in a location or hearing a song? And it just takes your mind back to remember that person. For me, the smell of a wood-burning stove will remind me of my grandparents and spending time with them, and it just brings a smile to my face. What is that for you? There are memories, right, in life that they're connected to sight and sound and smell and taste and touch. And when we experience that sight and smell and taste and touch, the memory comes back to us. Well, in today's verse, Jesus is going to tell us to remember him every time we participate in a specific action. Let's take a look. And Jesus, he's sharing what's known as the Last Supper with his disciples. What they're doing is they're eating a very traditional Jewish Passover meal together. And it's right before Jesus is arrested. That's why they call it the Last Supper. And Jesus will soon be arrested and crucified, and eventually he'll raise to life. But at the end of the meal, before all of that unfolds, Jesus says something unique to his followers that he hopes that you and I will remember today as well. Let's listen to it in Luke chapter 22, starting in verse 19. It says, Jesus, he took bread, he gave thanks, he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples. And he said, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance for me." You see, Jesus is telling his disciples a few verses around that to drink the wine and to eat the bread. And that's something that happened every Passover meal for every year for thousands of years. This was a traditional Jewish meal. But Jesus does something a little different. He says, every time from now on, when you drink the wine and you eat the bread, do this in remembrance of who I am and what I've done. That's what Jesus says. The new wine, what it is it's the covenant of Jesus' blood that was poured out for the whole world. And the bread that he gave is his body broken for the whole world, for every man and woman, boy and girl who put their faith in Jesus. And Jesus says, do this in remembrance of him. So it's two elements that we call in the church communion today that are linked to this memory of Jesus, of what he did on our behalf that we could never do for ourselves, that he became sin and he took on our shame willingly for us out of love. And he paid the price and the consequence for that. And then he rose again and he conquered death so you and I could be brought back into right relationship with God, so we could go from death to life for anyone who puts their faith in Jesus. And he says from then on, anytime you take or eat this meal, Corinthians tells us that. He says, do this in remembrance of this Last Supper that Jesus had with his followers, and specifically in remembrance of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So today, let's do that. Let's think about this call to remember that Jesus gave his followers at this final meal, this call to communion. And maybe for you, if you feel comfortable participating in communion with your community, with your family, to remember Jesus and what he did. We're called to remember together. We'll see you next time.